All right. I am going to try to do the SSIS and give you a clean copy of how to do that. This is in files. There's a service request text. And what it is a comma delimited file that explains, that adds new people with their addresses and their grant requests. So I've made a little text file that explains what we need to do. We need to import into 3 tables: person, person address, grant request. And we'll need to get their person key to do the second 2 inserts. We are going to use the data tools and the SQL Server data tools and the SQL Server integration services to do this. This would be best if this is something that you needed to do more than once. All right, so if it's something you needed to do over and over again, so you have these files that you have to import. So I am going to go down and find the Visual Studio. So SQL Server Tools, let's see. I think it's Visual Studio 2017 SSDT. I'm going to open that. When the setup is in progress, the setup isn't in progress. So I'm going to try running this. What setup is in progress? That's a problem. So let's go look at the setup. Waiting for the installer. This should not be the thing. I do not know why I'm needing to do this. I'm going to try launching it from here. Okay, it's fine. It opened before from the other place, but we'll begin it from here. I'm going to do File, New, Project. We're going to go down to Business Intelligence, and we're going to do Integration Services, and we're going to start an Integration Services project. I will name it New Grant Requests. Okay. Now, before I actually start this, I'm going to download the grant requests file so that we have a source. So real quickly, I'm going back here. I'm going to download, and I'm going to save it. And then I'm actually going to open it, and I'm going to save it again. File, save as, and I want to make sure again that it is Unicode, which it is. So I'm going to save. It is fine. Okay, so now let's go back to the Visual Studio. And we have an environment here where we have in here the Solution Explorer. We have several different folders, which will be different partners, and we have a toolbox over here with several different tools. One of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new connection manager. So I'm going to right click, and we're going to say new flat file connection. And I am going to leave it as a flat file connection manager. I'm going to get the file. We'll find it from downloads and service requests, and then open. And we can look at it. We can look at the preview of it. And so it has last name, first name, street, apartment, state, city, zip, amount, request date, service, and explanation. It looks like everything's in order there. Just like with the other wizard, we should go through and we should check on the data types. The name is a Unicode string, that's fine. Unicode string is fine for email. I might make it 255. Street is fine. Again, I'm going to change it to 255. Apartment is fine. State is fine. I think state is, I'm going to leave it at 50, although we could turn it to 2. City is good, but let's do 255. Zip is fine. Probably want it to be smaller. Amount is not a Unicode string. We want to change it to, I think, currency. If that fails, we'll have to do that. The request date, this is the one that's trickiest, as I recall. And I want it to be, I think, database date. If that fails, the service, we want it to be I need to look at the file. Let's look at it real quickly. The service is rent, so we have names there. So that will be output character. Let's do 255, although I don't think it needs to be that. An explanation is definitely 255. So I'm going to do OK, and if we've got anything wrong, we will have to come back and change this at different points. So I'm going to do OK. So now we have a connection manager. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drag a data flow task on here. All right. And I'm going to right click it and I'm going to change the name of the data flow task to insert people. Okay. And then we need to double click it and we go to the data flow. All right. And so data flow, we need to figure out our sources. So let's look down here where it says other sources. And the source is going to be a flat file source. So I'm going to drag that up here. All right. And we could name this whatever we want. So I'm going to say person source. We need to double click it. Flat file connection manager. We can look at the columns. Everything looks good. I think we want to leave them all there and we'll do OK. Okay. So we need to insert this into another table. So I think we can actually, because this one is pretty easy, we can just get a destination. So if you look down here, there's other destinations, and we want a SQL Server destination. So I am going to do that. And I'm going to take this blue arrow and I'm going to hook it there. That is the flow. And I'm going to change this to server or to people destination or person destination. And then I need to double click it to get into the properties. All right, so the connection manager will have to be new. And we want a new data connection. And we want the server name, if it will retrieve it. I think we could just do localhost, because notice it didn't come up with anything. So let's do localhost. And it should show some databases. There's Community Assist. So we have a thing for Community Assist. We can test the connection. It is good. I'm going to do OK. And I'm going to do OK. Now we're going to use a table here. So the one we want is person. And we can look at the mappings. Okay. So a person key we will ignore. Person last name, we want that to be last name. Person first name, we want to be first name. Email, we want to be email. Password, let's ignore. Entry date, we could do the request date for that. Or can we do, let's do nothing there. Let's ignore. And password seed we can ignore. So we'll just do these. I'm going to do OK. And that should be good. Now we could test it, but if we test it, we're going to have to delete the people after we add them. So I am going to assume those are good. I am going to go back to the control flow, and I'm going to add another data flow task. Oops, let's go back to the control flow. So I'm going to name this data flow task insert address. And we need to connect the green line here, right? So again, it's the flow. And then if we double click that, it goes here. And we're going to need our destination. So if we look at our sources, actually we need our source first. We're going to get a flat file source. Need to, we could do address source. And flat file things, we'll look at the columns. Looks okay. We need to do a lookup before we can do the last little bit here. So I'm going to bring in a lookup. And I'll change the name. We're going to lookup person. So we're going to connect those two. I'm going to double click this. And we want the connection, localhost community assist, which is what we want. The table we want to look up is person, what we just got. And columns, we want the person key. And we want to match it to the last name, the first name, and the email. Be really careful that you get the lines right. Otherwise, it won't get the right person for the key. All right, so we want all of those. and we do OK. Now we can do our destination. So we want a SQL Server destination. Output, we want to look up and match the output. And then I'm going to double click this. We want our connection manager is community assist. The table that we want is person address for this one. And then we want to do our mappings. And we want to say that person address key we can ignore. Is there an apartment in here? There is no apartment, so let's just ignore it. But there is a street. There is a city. There is a state. And there is a zip. And the person key is already mapped. So I think we're fine here. So what we've got are two control flows. Insert people, which gets the people from the source and sends them to the destination. And then we have insert address, which gets the files from the source, looks up the person key after it's been inserted, because they've been inserted, and then does the server, inserts the addresses into the destination. So we have one more control flow. So I am going to add a data flow task. And again, the green arrow to show the flow. Whoa, I keep wanting to, so I want to name it. So we wanted to do insert request. Okay, so now I double click it. And we will do the same thing. We want a flat file source. We'll double click it. We'll look at the columns. And we'll do OK. All right, so we do need to do a couple of lookups here. For one thing, we need to look up, and I'm going to, we'll call it address source, or grant source, request source, whatever. Okay, but we need to look up the person key again. So I'm going to get a lookup. We'll drag this down. And actually, before I do this, let's name it. So I'm going to say lookup person. Now we'll double click it. So the connection is community assist. The table that we're looking things up from is the person table. And we're going to look at the columns, and we need to get person key. And then the same thing as last time. I'm going to map last name to last name, first name to first name, and email to email. So, and I'm also going to do another lookup. I'm going to look up the grant type, but first I'm going to, we're going to say match output. And this one I'm going to, again, the connection will be this. The table that we're going to look up is a grant type. The columns, we want the grant type key, and it's going to be based on the grant type name. So service here is the grant type name. I'm just going to drag in there. Those are the two things that have to match. And I'm going to do OK. Now, one of the things that I want to do, because as I recall, there's an error here that can occur. I'm going to create a new table in the management studio. And this table will be a match of the grant type table. So I'm going to do, boy, that's tiny. I guess I'll magnify here. So I'm going to create a table, insert errors. And I'm going to create some fields. I'm going to give it the grant type key int grant type name in varchar 255 so I'm just trying to actually that isn't what I need. I need like person key and what else would I want? Comma after that. So person key, let's look at grant type or grant request. Explanation and amount. And we'll also do the grant request amount. Okay. And then we'll close the parentheses. And I'm going to create that table. And the reason I'm going to do this is that if there are any errors, we can redirect them to this table. So let's run that. Completed successfully, except I just did it in master. So let's do it in community assist and execute, and it's okay. All right. So going back to new grant requests, I'm going to do on error, escape for a moment. I want to do I'm going to do a SQL Server destination. All right. That's because we didn't drag. So I'm going to drag the error over here. And so we want to configure this. So instead of fail component, I want to redirect the row. And I want to redirect the row. All right. So we want to do that. I think that's correct. And then we want to do that. And I want to go to my new table, which is insert errors, and we will do mappings, and I'm going to do grant type key. We don't have anything like that. Let's do grant type name. So that's just service. Person key we got. Grant type explanation. We just want the explanation. Grant crest amount. We want the amount. Okay. I probably should have put the date in there too, but let's go back here. I'm going to do one other thing. I'm going to alter. Well, let's see if it'll work without the date. All right. So I'm going to do OK there. So that's the error output. We want another SQL destination. SQL Server destination for if it's good. Okay, and this one we bring the blue line down for. We do want to match output. And I'm going to name this one real quickly. Error table. And then this one is grant request. Okay, so this one I'm going to double click. Okay, we want to go to grant request. We want to do our mappings. And grant request key we can ignore, but let's do the grant request date is the same as the other date. So we'll say request date, person key, grant type key, and then we want explanation. And we want the amount. All right, so what is it not like? Let's look at the error message here. It doesn't like date and DB. It's trying to get that. And date time DB. All right, so one of the things that we need to do is go back to our flat file manager, look at our advanced, look at our request date. We did it as DT DB date, and I think what we needed is DB date. Is that right? It might be DB timestamp. Well, let's try DB timestamp. Let's do OK. Let's double click this. Yes. And then columns, Okay, and then the error went away, so I think we're okay. But we also have to look up this. Okay, let's look at columns. Okay, what is the warning here? Error output. Oh yes, we have fail component. We need to go redirect row and redirect row. Redirect row. All right, I have no idea. Let's go back. These need to be updated also. So yes. Okay. And we'll have to go to the other one too and update it. And yes, and okay. So everything looks okay now. I'm going to try to run this. I'm going to start it. I don't think I actually started it. I'm going to start it. It failed on insert people. Why did it fail on insert people? So if I look at this, those are warnings. Oh, yes. This is the failure. I understand. Okay. So let's go back here. We need to very quickly save all of this. So let's do File, Save All. I need to close it. And then I need to run it again as an administrator. So let's go down to here. Let's find our Visual Studio. I'm going to right click, More, Run as Administrator. And I want to do yes. So it should come up here in just a moment. We want to open up the one we had been running. And I'm going to run it. Still a failure on the first one. What is the failure there? So let's look at the progress. All right, so let's go back in the data flow. Control flow. I'm going to click on that. The source is fine. The destination is a problem. Let's look at our mappings. I think entry date is not allowed to be empty. Let's do request date for that. We're going to stop debugging and we're going to try it again. Yes, now they all worked. That was the only thing, is that the date was not was required. So if we were to look at the database here, and if we were to select star from person, and go down here to the very end of all of that, we will see our new people. The ones with null passwords are the new people. And we will see the same for person address. So if I execute that, go through, and they will all have null apartments too, but these are the people that were just added. And if we do grant request, we will also see that they have been added. So several of them have been added, but I'm curious, I think, let's look under from insert errors and see if there's any that were present there. And there were, and this is what I remembered, is that it didn't find childcare when it tried to look it up. So we have two people that we'd have to manually insert because they were redirected into the error table. Okay, I think that is it for this video. I don't know how clear that is, but that is what it is. So I'm going to go back, close this, I will save this, but I'll stop the debugging. The other thing about these is you can only run them once, because otherwise you'll have conflicts in the keys and the people. So it's a one-time run for this. I'm going to close this. And I'm going to stop the video.